welcome to the Pickle Planet podcast. I'm Jenna Morton.
And I'm Tosh Taylor.
And she says that in such a nice warm, like, oh, I'm just here sitting at my kitchen table.
It is so cold outside. And so we decided we haven't filmed at my house in forever.
Ages and ages.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to be back.
Yeah, it is. So I busted out. We originally had Pickle Planet podcast mugs made years ago because we're on year 4 of this podcast, believe it or not.
That's right. Yeah, this is episode 154, I believe.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. That's a lot of talking to each other.
That is, and it's a lot of driving all over New Brunswick, filming episodes too, and going into your businesses and showcasing your businesses. It's been a lot of fun.
It has.
Yeah.
It has been a lot of fun. And yeah, and I realized that in all those times that we've talked about so many different things on our podcast, we haven't really stopped and talked about podcasts a whole lot.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today, because that's what we like to talk about.
It's true. We love podcasts, listening to podcasts, making podcasts. Jenna and I actually do 3 other podcasts together, me as producer and Jenna as the host too. So that's something else that we often forget that we never talk about.
We do.
And they're really big podcasts.
They are. Yeah, they're really fantastic. The 3 podcasts that we work on together, aside from this one, are all kind of in the healthcare space, which is kind of interesting because neither of us are in healthcare.
We know nothing about it.
But I think that's part of what makes those podcasts very accessible and very interesting. And so one of them, the first one that we did is called With You in the NICU. And we did that as a partnership with the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. That one has 20 plus episodes.
Yeah.
And the topics are kind of all over there. They all relate to families who've dealt with prematurity in different ways. And so some of them are actually meditations. Some of them are talking with preemies who have grown up and become Olympic athletes. Some of them are talking with, best-selling authors who had premature infants and experiences. And it's there's a lot of stuff in there that is very timeless and very interesting, whether you have experienced prematurity or not. And then from that, we got approached by the Canadian Association of Neonatal Nurses. We worked together on that one. We've done 5 or 6 seasons with that one now.
Probably.
I think it's 5 seasons of 4 to 8 episodes each.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. But that one is huge in terms of how many people listen to that podcast. And again, that one gets a little bit more technical in terms of healthcare stuff because it's focused for nurses. That's the intended audience. And I have to say, there must be a lot of nurses out there that love podcasts. Because every time we get little notifications in our email when you reach certain kind of download levels with it. And I feel like every time I turn around, there's a new update about how well that podcast is doing.
It does do really, really well. And I think you're right, though. I think especially when you're working in the healthcare field, you're always wanting to update and update and update, right? So this is a great way for them to find out what other nurses across Canada and really across the world have been doing, which even for someone like Jenna said, that not in the healthcare field, I have been blown away by some of these interviews and things I had no idea were happening.
Well, yeah, and they're very interesting because podcasts can tend to lend themselves to those kind of short informational updates. You can get a lot of information out in a short podcast, but also in a way that I think people don't put themselves in that same technical world as if they were standing in front of a classroom of nurses and giving a presentation. It's much more conversational, and so it doesn't get bogged down in some of the medicine side of things, which makes it very accessible to people like us to listen to as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you and I know, like we've gone to many seminars each, and I find I get lost because I'm so busy trying to write notes, and then you miss something. And then, so a podcast is such a great way to take in information where you can actually pause the speaker. If you're taking notes, you can pause the speaker, write your note, and then not miss a beat, which is really nice too. And I think that that's probably something that a lot of people listening to podcasts don't think about. Because I know I definitely listen to podcasts mostly for fun, which is weird because I listen to true crime podcasts, but I'm not taking notes. promise.
She says.
Yeah. To hide my notebook. But before we move on to other podcasts we should talk about the third one that we do.
Yeah, actually. And the third one just was officially released. It just hit the airwaves, so to speak, this week, or last week, I guess. So Small Brains, Big Dreams is our newest podcast collaboration, and that's between the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation and the Newborn Brain Society. And that is a group of neurologists, and the podcast is focused on, that field dealing with infants, but all of the podcast episodes are about mentorship within that profession. And so there's only one that you can listen to right now if you're listening to this as it first comes out, but there will be 4 initial episodes in that podcast that'll come out throughout the course of the month of February. And these are 4 of the most decorated, well-respected neurologists in their field.
Unbelievable.
Like, oh my goodness. And they talk about the passion they have for mentoring people and the people that they've been mentored by. And within these 4 guests that I speak with, the experiences they've had in that field has changed so much and advanced so much over the course of their professions that they're literally talking about being mentored by the people who wrote the textbooks. And then you look at what's out there in the literature right now and you're like, oh, and it's written by these people. Like, this is like the basis of this profession. And they're also humble. And the information that comes out in terms of how to be a mentor and how to be a mentee and the 2 sides of that relationship, I think anyone who is in any profession will listen to these people speak and just be like, oh my goodness, yes.
They really had some really good points just about that in general. It didn't have to be about the fact that they're the most brilliant people in the world. But you know what else was funny, and I'm not sure if you caught it, but in the 4 episodes, they all 4 mentioned each other.
Yep.
At some point or another, and I don't know if they knew that they were all being interviewed or not, but it was I thought it was really funny that I was like, oh, so it's also a very small world, right? Because they weren't all Canadian doctors. They were from all over the world.
Only one of them is a Canadian doctor. The first episode that we released, Dr. Stephen Miller, is Canadian.
Right.
And then Terry Inder is originally from New Zealand, and she's in the United States on the east coast of Massachusetts.
Okay.
And Donna Ferrero is in California, and Linda DeVries is in Utrecht.
Wow.
So yeah, it was literally an international range of guests, and it was really fun as we did the interviews to realize that they kept mentioning each other in their interviews when you asked them, people that were important to them in their journey. And I don't think that they each knew who else was going to be featured.
Exactly. No, it was really neat, and that is another cool thing about podcasts is the interconnection, the things you learn, the storytelling that comes out of it. Because when they were mentioning each other, they were just talking about the things they'd done together or what they've learned from that person. Well, now you get to listen to that and learn from that person as well in a roundabout way, right? So you could also, next time you're interviewed, bring up someone, or and I couldn't talk enough about podcasts. I could talk all day, which is why we decided to do this.
We won't talk all day. We have about a 23-minute limit, just so you know.
Come back, just message me. We'll talk. Yeah. It'll be fine. But yeah, that's my favorite thing about it is getting an education and not realizing that you're getting an education at the same time and that they're so accessible at any time of day.
I think that's part of what I've always loved about radio to begin with, and now podcasting is just how accessible it is. And I think that that's one of the joys of podcasting and why it's really taken off over the last couple of years is other people have come to discover that, right? It doesn't take a lot of technical know-how to create a podcast.
Right.
There are different levels of types of podcasts you can create and what you can do with it, but the very basics of it are extremely accessible, and you can put things out there in a way that yeah, people just, I love that you can take it with you in a way that you can't necessarily take a book with you or take, a TV show or a documentary, whether you're doing this for kind of that educational, edutainment kind of stuff, or if you're just doing it for entertainment, you can be washing the dishes and listening to a podcast. You can't wash the dishes and read a book.
Right.
You can't, depending on how you set things up, I guess you could wash the dishes and watch a show, but I don't like doing that. It doesn't work for me. But having, earbuds in, you can do that and be doing something else with your hands. And I think that that's part of what people are really realizing in terms of why podcasts are so popular.
Well, podcast listenership in the last 5 years has increased 120%. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. But it's funny, when you talk about getting into the world of podcasting, a lot of people would say, well, it's already been done, or there's already a podcast about that, or so on and so forth. But if you really break it down, these are numbers that I just learned the other day and I was blown away by it. For every one podcast, there's about 570 bloggers. So that
Really?
that is crazy. Remember when blogging was huge all of a sudden, right? So kind of the same thing. For every one podcast, there are 67 YouTube channels. So vlogs.
Huh.
So there aren't as many podcasts as you think there are.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Well, and I have to say what I find not interesting but infuriating about podcasts is that there is a bit of a chokehold on accessibility in terms of how people listen to them, right? It's very simple to put a podcast out into the world, and there's a lot of ways that you can go and find anything that's out there. But most people tend to listen to podcasts through 2 or 3 main avenues.
Yep.
And I don't really want to get into the whole debate around all of the different platforms and whatnot. But I've noticed how few podcasts get put in front of you if you go on to any of the popular apps.
Yes.
Right? And you might think, oh, there's only 10 podcasts on this topic. That's not the best place to go look for things. But unless you happen to know the exact name of a podcast, it is very hard to find it on those kind of most popular apps that you might go looking for. So just my word to the wise to everyone, if you're interested in podcasts for a particular topic, or because oh, I remember hearing that Tosh Taylor has a podcast, just go into, a search bar and search for the name or the person or the topic with podcast, and try to find things that way rather than just going through some of the main listening apps that you might use at first. Most of those podcasts are going to show up on those, and you'll be able to find them on those apps and platforms if you know what you're looking for.
That's the key thing. And a lot of these platforms own some of these podcasts now, right? Like Spotify has gotten into buying podcasts. So those are the ones you're going to see on the main page, and not yours and mine.
Yes,
so, as hard
unless
as
you
we try.
subscribe.
Yeah, unless you subscribe.
And then you can have it pop up in your own feeds.
Yeah.
But yes, I would suggest if people are looking for things on a specific topic, that just going into, Apple or any of the main apps shouldn't be your first stop. Go through, regular internet searches to find them, and you can listen to anyone who creates a podcast is probably putting it out there on, a web hosting form that is not necessarily tied to any of those big platforms.
That's a very good point. Actually, I'm sure none of them are. When you're first starting out.
I don't. Well, even that, other than the few that are exclusive to certain streaming services, most people use other names that you would never hear of. Like Blueberry is the one we use a lot, and
so random.
Podbean.
There's Podbean, and the one I use is Buzzsprout.
That's the other way.
But
I used to use Podbean.
I think when we were searching them, Anchor too is one that I looked into. And there's great options for every person. I prefer Buzzsprout, but Jenna, I don't know if you've just gotten used to Blueberry or what it is. So it just depends the person. But if you are thinking about podcasting, like Jenna said, when we started this podcast, we started basically in a closet. My storage room upstairs. It's so small and so hot, with one microphone. that just stood in the middle. And there's different types of microphones, which is, we're not going to get into that, but it's a type of microphone that catches all the sound. So not only would you hear us, but you would hear everything else that was going on in my house. So, which still happens from time to time.
Yeah, and we knew what we were doing when we did that.
Yeah.
We both understand what goes into better sound quality, but it's a matter of you make that decision between perfection and doing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, people listening didn't, and maybe some of them did, but for the most part, people didn't stop listening because they could hear the background noise
Right.
of your kids in the house.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear what we were saying. And I think that holds true for anyone who feels like they have something to say. Do it. Jump in and do it. And eventually you can learn those other things, or you can hire someone who knows how to do those other things if you want to get to that higher quality.
Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't let things like that be what holds you back, especially if you offer a service with your business. Podcasting can be such a great way for people to understand what your business does. You know, you can have like little tutorials, or if you're a fitness instructor, let's say, for instance, you could do podcasts on, you know, this week you're going to talk about working on your shoulders, and this week you're going to talk about working on your legs, and you build a library. And it's remarkable what podcasting can do. I had a client once that was a plastic surgeon, and so many people are afraid to ask questions, right, when it comes to a facelift or any kind of augmentation. So if they can secretively listen to your podcast and find out what things would be happening if you got a potential surgery, it just makes sense.
Yeah. And it's very accessible, right? Like, not just in the sense that, like I was talking about before, in terms of it's easy to listen to as you're doing things, but for a lot of people who have, you know, challenges with being online reading things, which is how most people are getting their information these days, having it online is important for some people, but having an audio version of what you already have online, that's actually helping you meet the needs of your customers in a much better way, because not everyone can sit down and read a website for various reasons.
Yeah, I'm totally the type of person that I can't read something and suck it in. Like, I need to be told it, or I need to physically write it out myself, and that's the only way that I can pull in all of these things. Give me a useless fact all day, and I'll remember that, but not important things. So if I can listen to it, like Jenna said, while I'm doing the dishes, while I'm folding the laundry, it just, to me, it makes far more sense to be able to have that ability, which I think is just the greatest thing in the world. And I know not everybody loves podcasts. Like, we all know that, obviously. Some people like TV shows, and that's cool too.
Well, and I think too, if you're the type who says, I don't like this entire genre, well, it's you might not like a genre, but podcasting isn't a genre. Podcasting is the medium, right? So, like, for me, we do current affairs talk show interview-based podcasts for the most part. That's not what I listen to as a pod. When I listen to podcasts, that's not what I listen to.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't usually interest me to listen to be honest. I love doing it.
Yeah.
It's not what I listen to. I love listening to documentary styles. You love true crime, but in a different way than I love true crime.
Yeah.
And, there's also this whole world of podcasts now that are really more audio books / radio plays. And so if you're the type of person who just wants that type of entertainment, like, I'm looking at my list of, my list of podcasts that I tend to listen to and, tell people they should listen to. Bridgewater. I don't know if you listen to this one. I feel like you would enjoy Bridgewater. So Bridgewater is Aaron Mahnke. Aaron Mahnke has, I don't know how many podcasts now. Grim and Mild is his kind of...
Grim and Mild.
Yes.
I dig it.
Yeah, so they're all kind of in that dark Lore, I think, was his first.
Okay.
It was certainly his first breakout one. Lore's like one of the long time, I can't remember how many years ago that started and I was listening to it. So Bridgewater is a completely fictional story about this particular little spot where it's they describe it kind of as a Bermuda Triangle of, the northeastern US.
Okay.
And it's completely fictional and it's so well done that I was totally sucked into it. And one of the voices in it are Misha Collins, who, if you watch Supernatural,
Okay.
you will know who he is. Melissa Ponzio and Nathan Fillion.
So
are,
he
the
uses
voices.
actors.
Oh yeah,
in
it's actors. It's actors. It's
Interesting.
complete. So it's like the radio plays of old,
Yeah.
but told in a very modern way. And yeah, I was a huge fan. I'm
Yeah.
very, and also you will enjoy this. Like every episode of Bridgewater starts with this is made for you to listen with headphones on.
Oh.
Because the audio is so good. This is high quality audio. And if you have proper headphones and you hear, like when there's a rustling in the woods, well, one time the rustling's over here and another time it's on your other side, and you'll hear little snippets of things in the background. The layers of audio on it are beautiful.
Love it.
Beautiful.
As a podcast producer, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. No, Bridgewater.
Can't wait.
And Alligator Candy. I don't know if I told you to listen to that one either.
No, I've never heard that.
So
I wouldn't forget that name.
Oh, Alligator Candy came out in 2021. Fantastic documentary, true crime style. And again, it's like I was walking, listening to it, and I would stop and just be like, I love what they just did with the audio. The sound in it was so good. Like I spent courses in university doing soundscapes, just layering sound, learning how to tell stories with sound. And so to hear people doing it at this caliber, just, love it. So
And
yeah,
that's what-
Alligator Candy.
That's what you like, exactly what you mean, like listening, how they used to like sit around the radio, and that's what they would do before television. They had, these moments of like the huge crescendo of music and all the things in the background. It's just magic. It's absolute magic because it's using your brain in a different way, right? Because you're not using it when you can see it all in front of you on TV. So I find the same thing. There's some really great producers at CBC, obviously. And David Ridgen, everything he does, I absolutely love. And he's the same way. Like he will record when he stops his car, gets out of the car, walks across a gravel road. Like you're there with him, even though you're not really there with him. And that is the entire point. Like that, I think it's almost that makes his podcast better than, because my kids were like, this guy's voice is awful.
Yeah.
I can't stand. And I was like, it took me a little while to get used to his voice too.
Yeah,
but then, it's a different voice. Yeah, it's a different voice, but it's a good voice.
But it's also, that's another point that like, it doesn't matter what your voice sounds like.
Yeah.
If you have a good story to tell, you have a good, thought to share, don't let what you think your voice sounds like, or when you hear your voice back at you, think about what your voice sounds like, because it sounds different to everyone.
Yeah. And we joke about this all the time. Jenna's voice does not pick up on microphones.
Not at all.
So
Never has. No, it's not gonna. I'm not gonna change it.
Hasn't stopped her now, has it?
No.
So don't let it get in your way.
Yeah. Just when you're talking about David Ridgen, I remember sitting in my car on the side of a highway trying to get the sound of transport trucks going past. So like one little 2-second clip you'll hear of a sound effect on something may have taken more than an hour to get.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. It's not easy to get to that level.
To get the perfect
It's not
noise.
as simple as just recording yourself getting out of your car once.
Yeah, it's so true. He's probably got microphones tapped to his shoes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Anyway, we are going to have to wrap this up because, as always, we start talking. We could talk forever on podcasts. But in the show notes, if you go and find the original website version of this, we will list some of our favorite podcasts, some of the ones we mentioned, and a few that we didn't get to as well, because I know we both have very long lists.
Yes.
And we were lucky enough to do a presentation a little over a week ago now for Scotiabank, and we got into a great discussion about all the podcasts that we like to listen to. So we're going to put some more of those out there for you guys.
Yeah, and if you ever want us to come do some unsolicited advice for your friends and family, let us know, because we really enjoyed that.
Yes, it was fantastic. We just got to talk about what we do and why we do it.
Yeah.
So we hope everyone is doing well and that we'll chat with you next week.
See you next week. Thanks for watching.